Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we're talking about this article from Cosmic Book News, which just sounds like the most... It really does sound fake. It really does sound fake. I remember when this article broke earlier today, and I retweeted it, and I said, I think we should take this news with a very, very, very large grain of salt. Not only because I've never heard of this website before, but also because when you actually look at the content and what it's saying and how it lacks sources, it makes you wonder whether or not it's legitimate or not. But anyway, this is by Matt McCloyne. And this was written earlier today. It says, following the performance and reception of Star Wars: Last Jedi, as well as Han Solo, Disney has placed the movie franchise on hold, and now it is said they are resetting Star Wars and giving fans time to heal. Now, I would love for this to be true. And honestly, I do think this is true to a certain extent. And it's not because I have Disney, it's not that I have, documents from Disney, inside sources at Disney. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that I just live in the real world, and I look at what's going on in Star Wars, and I see, okay, well, Last Jedi came out, broke the fandom, then 6 months after, Solo came out and lost $200 million. So, yeah, if I was Disney right now, I'd say, you know what, let's just step back and make sure that what we put out there is actually good, so that way we don't have to worry about movie, losing any money in the future. So I honestly do think that there is this sense of resetting, maybe not to have the fans heal, because at the end of the day, I don't really think they really care that much about the fans, seeing that we got The Last Jedi, seeing that we've had Ryan Johnson call a bunch of us man babies, and a bunch of other people coming out to say all these random ridiculous things. Matt Miller just being one of the most recent ones to do those things, and we found out that he has very strong connection to Disney since Esquire is also owned by Disney. But that's, of course, speculation only on our parts. But I do think it's still important nonetheless to be very clear that it makes sense. It does make a lot of sense that they would be resetting it, but once again, this person is not really showing us any evidence, and the evidence that they do show doesn't really mean anything. The news comes as a result of it learned that Disney has now canceled LEGO Star Wars Day, the popular annual event held during the spring at Legoland, California. I've never heard of this event before. The grammar of this article, I've gone after grammar in other articles of which I don't agree with. This, obviously, I do agree with, some of the content in here, but if you're trying to say that Legoland Star Wars Day is canceled and that's proof positive that they're putting a hold on Star Wars, that's thin. That's very thin at best. The Star Wars fan site Rebel Scum offers that Lucasfilm stated 2018 would be the last year they do Lego Star Wars Day. Okay, once again, Rebel Scum, don't know who they are, never heard of them before, not knocking them at any point, just like I'm not necessarily knocking Cosmic Book News, but if you're going to be claiming to have certain information and you don't really deliver on that information, then that's definitely a bit of a problem. In addition, the site reports an unnamed source at Disney has suggested that the motivation was to refocus expenditure and limit Star Wars exposure to reset the franchise and allow fans time to heal. Now, that sounds correct. That sounds like it would be a good business move to say, hey, let's just take some time. Let's not put any projects fully on display at this point, except for the ones that are already out there, that are already in production, and let's just see what we can do. Let's see what can happen with the products that we actually have. That makes a lot of sense. But the person that's saying this sounds just as legitimate as people from the other side saying, well, our inside sources are blah, 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 and all these, even when they name drop bigger names like Kathleen Kennedy, etc., you still don't believe what they're saying because they're just usually making up garbage. I would also put the same kind of hesitation to believe what this person's saying, that they have an unnamed source at Disney suggesting something to be the effect. I've talked about this before about other people on YouTube, on Twitter, who claim to have inside sources, who claim to have seen certain, internal documents. And even though I'm not necessarily saying that they're lying, I'm not saying that I'm not denying or doubting what they have seen, but it is still something I say anyone should take with a grain of salt because we honestly don't know. We have not seen it ourselves. And when you say, oh, it's an internal document that only a few people have ever seen, then it kind of makes it hard to, it's kind of almost like the Mormon situation where it's like, oh, I had these golden plates that told all these stories, but I don't have them anymore, but don't worry, I wrote them down because I memorized them. Okay, but we haven't seen them yet. So again, it explains why there's a lot of doubt within Mormonism, and also explains why this is the same way, where we haven't actually seen these things that they're talking about. We actually haven't heard any names and had any actual clarification or confirmation of anything. So this is just pure speculation, at this point in time. The Lego fan site, The Brick Fan, further offers that a reason Disney also canceled Lego Star Wars Day is to shift focus to the Lego Movie 2. I don't really understand why they would. That doesn't make any sense, because Lego Star Wars Day should be the biggest day. And now it does make sense because Star Wars is kind of toxic right now, all the pun included in the entire world, and Lego Movie did very well, and Lego Movie 2 is set to do very well also, but that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that you would take that day out, because it does still put Legos and Star Wars out there. So you would think that Disney would want to have those two events together, because in their eyes, it might help them more than hurt them. It also said that while there could be a chance for LEGO Star Wars Day to return at some point in the future, that in its current form, it is done. News of Disney canceling LEGO Star Wars Day and potentially resetting the franchise doesn't come as much as a surprise, which is due to a huge failure of Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson's Last Jedi. That I agree with. I think that if there was going to be some kind of pause, if there was going to be some kind of canceling of future projects, or at least putting them on hold, that it would obviously be because of that, because that is the very moment that the franchise was broken. That is the very moment that we had this happen. Some people might try and say it happened with The Force Awakens. I personally think Force Awakens could have been okay with a better second film. If The Last Jedi had not happened, there could have been a better movie made that would have been able to continue the story and fixed any of the issues from the first film, etc. That didn't happen, of course, because we got Rian Johnson. There are certain reports saying that Rian Johnson's movie was written before, The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens, which seems to imply that Rian Johnson had a major impact on The Force Awakens, and also that they knew that this was happening in the first place. And that is true. Again, that's speculation, I feel. I think there's some people who claim, it was some verified person on Twitter who's trying to, defend Star Wars and mention that it was the plan from the very beginning. So I was like, it wasn't out of nowhere. The character arcs weren't random. Everything makes sense. And how do I know that? Oh, that's because it was planned from the very beginning. And if that is the case, then that's the dumbest movie decision that you could possibly make, because when you have these two films, Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, next to each other, they don't work. They just, from a logical standpoint, they are logically inconsistent, and they are not two movies that are part of a trilogy. It is one independent movie and another independent movie. Like, that's how they play. So if you put these into the box set, guess what? Most people are going to say, I'm going to skip this one because this one is just so off. This one is just so subversive, and it's just so bad. Why would I want to watch it? Now, who knows if episode 9 is going to be able to pick up the pieces. I don't think it's going to be able to. There's certain rumors out there still that they might try and split it into two. I think at this point, since we're now a year out and we haven't heard anything official, that's less likely to be the case. And honestly, they need two movies to fix it, because you need one movie to retcon and to fix all the issues that happened with The Last Jedi, and then make a final film in part 2. But it looks like that might not actually be the case, and that might not actually be what happens. But still something worth talking about, still something worth thinking about, because it might be the best idea for Disney to do that going forward. But also, it might not be, because if Disney Star Wars is truly as broken as we think it to be because of The Last Jedi, and because we think that the movie's not going to make a whole lot of money, maybe they wouldn't want to split into two, because that would possibly hurt them financially, because that means they would have to spend money on two films, twice the amount of money as just one final film to end this entire experiment, which has just utterly failed. Then, it's better to them spend on one movie rather than two, especially if they might not make that money back or barely break even if they just put one instead of two films out. So that's kind of my thought on that, about why I think that rumor specifically is dead in the water. But I still honestly, again, Cosmic Book News, the writer of this article, is definitely trying to, appeal to us. I think this is very much a clickbait article. I think that this article is meant for us, for people of the Phantom Menace, to click on it and give this site views, because when you actually read the content, you understand, wait a minute, there really isn't any new information here that we don't have already. Most of this is speculation, and there really are no breaking news stories. Oh, Lego Star Wars Day got canceled in one theme park in California. Well, that doesn't prove anything. That doesn't really show anything. There could be a multitude of reasons. Maybe it wasn't doing well for a period of years. Maybe there's some kind of disconnect happening between the brands. I don't know. I honestly do not know at this point, but it just doesn't seem like that's proof positive that this break is happening. I think that you're better at just sticking with speculation rather than trying to say, oh, this is news. Anyway, in the wake of The Last Jedi's failure, which subsequently saw the Han Solo movie, Solo, as the worst performing Star Wars movie ever, that is a fact, Disney CEO Bob Iger said the Star Wars movies will be slowed down, and it is also known a new movie or franchise thought to be from Rian Johnson has been placed on the back burner or canceled. We really don't have any proof of that either. I mean, obviously, we do have Bob Iger coming out saying that, oh, we did too much too fast, which is just not true. It's because you did The Last Jedi and it sucked. Like, that's the reason why you're in this situation, Bob, because you allowed Rian Johnson to do whatever the hell he wanted. That is the reason why, and he did say that he was wanting to slow things down. Instead of doing 2 a year, going back to the 1 a year, which, again, Star Wars could work in that 2, maybe even 3 film a year category if they had the right person behind it. If Kathleen Kennedy was not the person in charge of Lucasfilm right now, they could totally get away with it. And the proof of that is Marvel. Marvel has been able to do 2, maybe even at tops 3 Marvel films, and all of them have made money. Not a single one of them. They have not made a Marvel film yet that has lost money, and they've been making films. They made 20 films in 10 years, which breaks down essentially to around 2 films a year. But they could put out 3 and they would still not lose money. And the reason why is because they have people who know what they're doing. Kevin Feige has very tight reins on the ship. He's making sure that the stories that are being told, even though they're not all perfect, because again, there's definitely some duds, but even the duds still made money. And the reason why is because they have someone competent behind the wheel. Star Wars, Lucasfilm, does not have someone competent behind the wheel. She might be good at working with money. That might be the case. She might be a good money person to go to on a film as a producer, but she is not a creative mind. And the proof of that is the current state of Star Wars. That is how we know. The fact that she'll allow a film to go 80% of the way through in Solo, fire the directors, and then have everything reshot. That is the sign of a bad executive. That is the sign of a bad, president, a bad boss, essentially, of an entire company. And it shows disjointedness. The fact that she's fought with other directors, too, that there were certain directors that were on certain projects that ended up either getting fired or leaving because of the disjointedness. Again, it shows a lack of leadership. And that is what needs to be talked about here. Don't, so Cosmic, don't just put speculative news out there and trying to act like it's news. Don't be like the fake news that we already are so used to. Just be honest and say, hey, here are my thoughts on the situation. Don't say, oh, Disney's resetting Star Wars, even though I have no actual proof. I'm just putting together facts that we already know and then trying to spin the Star Wars Lego Day as being proof that something's actually happening. Oh, and by the way, there's an unnamed source that we have that says this as well. Doesn't really work. It looks like you're just trying to get clicks instead. While the films are on hold, Disney is now focusing on the Star Wars TV shows for their upcoming Disney Plus streaming app, which includes the Jon Favreau Mandalorian series, which I'm personally very excited for. The pieces are there. Now, whether or not they're able to deliver on those pieces, whether or not they're able to put something awesome together, that is totally on Jon Favreau and also on Lucasfilm. I really hope that's the case. If as long as Kathleen Kennedy's creative mind and her story group are far away from it, it should be okay. So it really depends on how much power Jon Favreau has. Knowing him and knowing the work that he's done, I would assume that he has a lot more control than maybe other persons have had working in Disney Star Wars at this point. So I have high hopes for that series. And a Rogue One prequel starring Diego Luna reprising the role of Andor, which no one cares about. That's a show that no one was asking for. Again, The Mandalorian, that's actually an interesting series. Like, people have loved The Mandalorian story, not just with Boba Fett, but also even more so going into Clone Wars, going into Rebels, when they start to talk about Mandalore. Again, I cannot wait to get to that in Rebels, especially, because I know it's coming. So I know that there's a lot of history and there's a lot of background about the Mandalorian people that a lot of people really like, because they are essentially a warrior people. So it's just already awesome, and it's badass. That's the reason why so many bounty hunters come from Mandalore. So I cannot wait for that series to come out. Going to Rogue One prequel with Diego Luna, that's a character that's very forgettable. When you think back to Rogue One, most people don't think, oh, you know whose character was awesome? Diego Luna's character. In fact, that may have been one of my least favorite characters because he kills someone at the very beginning, and then they just kind of just, pretend like it didn't happen. It doesn't show any conflict. He doesn't show any internal conflict whatsoever, and it just was a bad character development. It was a bad plot point, in my opinion. So that's not a character that you should be making a prequel of. It just doesn't make sense to me why they're doing that. So that, out of all these, both of those series, Mandalorian, great, already in production, looks like it's gonna be fine. Diego Luna is the one that, the Rogue One prequel is the one that's just getting started. Who knows if it's actually come to fruition or not. I think if it does, it's not gonna be as successful as Mandalorian, but that's just my thoughts. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts on this comic book news? Again, I would say don't worry about clicking on this. Don't give this one views. Even though it's saying all the things that we want to hear, it's not providing any new information, and it's speculation at best. This is not news. Disney resetting Star Wars. It sounds great, but unfortunately it looks to be a clickbait article by Cosmic Book News, which also sounds a lot like comic book news, and I feel like this is a site that's just trying to get more views and more attention for that very reason. I could be wrong on that, but that just seems to be the case. But anyway, guys, if you like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.